husband cheated and got his mistress pregnant.
I watched that 71-part story, so you don't have to. That's Marissa, and one day after dropping her stepson off at school, she came home and there was a woman in her driveway. When she walked up to her, the woman introduced herself and told her that she's her husband's mistress and that she's also pregnant. It's 71 parts because I watched both of these women retell their stories from each of their own accounts. And from Marissa's side of the story, she says that when this woman walked up to her, she introduced herself and said, "I know this is awkward. Do you want to go inside and talk? I know it's cold outside." Marissa's like, "No, it's fine. Whatever you have to tell me right now." She goes on to tell her, like, "Me and your husband have been in an affair for about 6 weeks now. I'm pregnant." At this point, Marissa's looking at her like, "Oh, okay." The mistress's name is Ashley. Ashley goes on to say, "I really love him." She's smiling this entire time, telling her, like, we want to be together. And Marissa stops her and says, like, "I don't think I need to hear this from you. Like, I probably should talk to my husband." So she's like, "Oh, okay." She ends the conversation, walks away. At that moment, Marissa tries to call her husband. Her husband is not answering. He works on submarines, so the communication is usually a little, like, tough. So she ends up just, like, calling her family. She packs up a bag, gets money from her mom, because at this point she didn't even have money to put in her gas tank to get over to her mom's house. She leaves that same day that she finds out that her husband's having an affair. So as she's texting her husband back and forth, she's asking him, like, "Is there anything I can do? Can I fix this marriage?" And he tells her, like, no. She says if she looks back and really thinks about it, there's definitely red flags, but at the time she wasn't observing them as red flags. In the beginning, for her own mental health, she really didn't want to know too much about the details of the affair. She had an idea and kind of like had her own assumptions, but she didn't really find out anything until later on. So her and her husband Bill met in 2018. They got married in 2020. And when they first fell in love, everything was great, everything was beautiful. When asked if she knew about Ashley and if she knew that he was cheating, she said that she had no idea. She was completely blindsided. She went on to live with her mom and moved there. 3 weeks later, she went and packed up all her things with a few of her family members and some other folks and just got everything out of there. At that point, she found, underwear, panties, things that belonged to Ashley inside of the house and kind of like displayed them on social media. And basically was just like, wow, she's already moved in essentially. It's only been 3 weeks. Grabbed all her stuff, went back to her mother's house, started to rebuild her own life, go to therapy. She was already in therapy, but just, continued to work. As she's at her mother's house, she logged into Netflix to watch on their joint account, and she saw that the, mistress had made her own profile on the Netflix, and that was just a heartbreaking thing. Most of the 71-part story is really Marissa's healing journey and her just sharing at the beginning, especially the early on days, how she was feeling on a day-to-day basis. She was doing morning and afternoon updates and being like, "Hey, today I feel really good," or "Hey, today was really rough," or "Hey, I thought I was doing good, but now I feel like I'm being really set back," because at one point her dog ended up passing away, who she had for 7 years, and so that pushed back her healing. And healing's not linear, so you might feel good one day, then you might feel in the trenches. It's very much not a 1, 2, 3 step to healing. She was definitely oscillating between feeling really good and really bad, and so most of this series is just her documenting how she was feeling, giving updates about the stepson and how her relationship was going to move forward. She said that the biological mother reached out to her and was consoling her and saying "Hey, any relationship that you're willing to have with the stepson." The plan was for her to have the stepson over spring break, so that happens. She said it was a really good time, but it was also really hard at the same time because it was remnants of her old life. Everything happened in March. She was doing updates all through March up until the beginning of April, and then the updates just stopped, and then she picks them back up in June, and she's like, "Hey guys, a lot's been going on. I had to back off of social media and posting my journey because it was weighing really hard on me and not really helping me at that point." And she was like, "A lot has happened. I'm gonna update you guys. These are all pre-recorded videos. Everything that's been done has been done. You can't stop me. This is just for you to know what's happening." So she starts updating us basically. So in the state of Virginia, to get divorced, you have to be legally separated for 6 months. So they were in that limbo phase of 6 months of waiting to actually be legally divorced. And so they're communicating, they're hashing out their marriage. They both decided for both of their mental well-being, it's best that they sit down and really talk everything out, the good, the bad. And she wanted to also know for herself, her shortcomings and what she did wrong from her perspective. She's saying I wanted to know what I can do better for my next relationships. She explains that she has her own mental struggles, like feeling numb, disassociating, having troubles like attaching to her emotions and expressing her emotions as well. And so she felt like therapy was helping her to like communicate and not feel like, she felt like in the relationship she would be like, okay, there's a problem, let's talk about it right now, like my anxiety is high, let's talk about it, where he'll be like, I need to take a step back and kind of just like think about this, come back and have a discussion once I cool off. And that would only like heighten her anxiety more, you know? So in therapy, she was trying to learn how to like both feel the emotions and also like work through them, and not just like detach and let the feeling of like numbness kind of take over. And she was like, this is like the worst time to not want to feel numb because I'm going through so much. Then she says, later on in July, okay, you guys, I'm going to start doing the updates again August 1st. And so she begins August 1st telling us what's going on. So in the beginning, when everything kind of happened, they were both very civil. They were having conversations, very limited conversations, but, you know, talking logistics. And then she said after that, you know, like the loneliness really started to set in and just like missing him and things like that. So she ended up reaching out and being like, hey, let's meet up, let's talk, like let's hash things out. So he agreed, they meet up, and they end up trying to figure out, like, is our marriage even savable? So they start doing work towards, like, what was the issues in the marriage? Let's identify them. Are they things that we can fix? Are they, like, just what they are, you know? And then they realize, okay, our marriage is savable. So then from that point, they decided, like, can she forgive his cheating, right? Can she forgive also him having a child? And she's like, okay, this child is an innocent bystander. He didn't do anything. You cheating is like, that's what I don't know if I can forgive, right? So they start working through whether or not she can forgive him. At that point, she forgave some parts, but not all parts. So at this point, from Marissa's point of view, she says that they decided, like, okay, I'm going to try to forgive you. We're going to try to work this out. So she packs up all of her things. She tells her family a week before she's going to move back to Virginia that she's moving. And literally 15 hours before she was going to pack up and head out, he texted her and said, just kidding, I can't do this, never mind, and blocked her. That's Marissa's side of the story. At that point for Marissa, she's like, I did everything I could do. I can wipe my hands clean of this. Like, I don't need to think, like, I didn't turn every stone to figure out if my marriage was workable. I can walk away absolutely head high knowing I did everything I can possibly do. She said her family supported her, understood that she needed to do this on her own, and was just there to, like, console her and be there for her. Now, on Ashley's end of the story, she's saying that her and Bill have known each other since they were like 24 and 26, and that she, you know, was dating him off and on. They were in love. They were just like perfect friends, perfect lovers. But they would, you know, have their off and on seasons, and eventually she ended up going to prison, and that's when he ended up meeting Marissa and marrying her and breaking things off with Ashley. And so she was just like, okay, like I accepted that, I moved on with my life. I got out of prison in 2020, moved on with my life, started rebuilding it. And she said it was about a year ago that Bill reached out to her. She offered him a friendship. They, you know, quickly realized their deep connection was still there, and they started rebuilding it. She said when Bill first came to her and started reaching out, he was very lonely. He really didn't have anybody. And she kind of was just like there as a friend, and it kind of grew from there. And she realized, yo, I still love this guy. So they ended up, you know, having their affair. And she says that she ended up saying something to Marissa because when Bill tried to cut it off, she would like manipulate him and get him back to like crumble and go back to her and try to fix their marriage. So she felt like if it came for her, hey, I'm pregnant and we're moving forward, that Marissa would finally understand like the marriage was over. So that's why she said she approached her in the driveway. From Ashley's point of view, she's like, I know it wasn't right. I didn't enter this with the intentions of hurting anybody. Ashley is saying that when Bill reached out to her, she had no idea that he was married. She didn't know that she was going to fall back in love with him. She wasn't looking for a relationship, and it just kind of all happened. She had no intentions of hurting anybody, and she's just like very sorry that what she did led to her getting heartbroken. So the reason why her panties were in the house was because she came down after Marissa first found out and went to her mother's house. She came down from North Carolina to help clean up the house, and I'll put a few photos here that Ashley put up of the house and the state of it. And she said that she knew that Marissa's family was coming to pack up all their things, so she wanted to clean the house and like save her from embarrassment. And so she was staying there, but solely for the purpose of like helping clean and like bringing the house back into order. She's saying that she's telling her side of the story, not to justify anything. She knows that what they did was wrong. It's not okay to have an affair. It's not okay to break up a family. But at the end of the day, like, it is what it is, and that's what happened. But she just wanted to come out and tell her story because she felt like Marissa was telling some parts of the story, but not all of it, and that she was lying. And she even shares, like, the actual confrontation of her and Marissa in the driveway when she first tells her that she's the mistress and that she's pregnant. Ashley tells us that she went to prison while she was an active addict, and she was in prison for larceny, medical fraud, and also possession of a controlled substance, and that was her past life. She's been clean for 6 years. She's rebuilt her life. At some point, she was also an SW, and Bill's been there through all of these stages in her life. She does tell us that she has 2 other children from previous relationships, and that, you know, at one point she didn't have custody, but she's done her best to be in her children's lives. She understands that, you know, Marissa posted this in order to have her healing journey and to have this, like, online diary, but she feels like it's one thing to be on a healing journey. It's another thing to be sneaking around with your soon-to-be ex-husband in hotel rooms and, like, being intimate, you know, while I'm pregnant at home cooking him dinner. Marissa mentions that they were, like, you know, trying to figure out if their marriage was fixable. They were actually also intimate. And so she was just kind of bringing light to the fact that, like, Marissa went and did the same thing to her that Ashley did to her. Ashley had no idea that Bill was trying to reconcile with Marissa and trying to fix his marriage. She had no idea that they were being intimate. She completely blindsided by that. She's basically trying to say in this story, there is no good person or bad person. Now, Bill, the husband, does enter the chat and give a little bit of his perspective. The issue is that he didn't finish his story, but I did want to get out this story to you guys because you've been asking for it for so long. But Marissa's page was private for so long, and so I was just waiting for her to make her page unprivated so I can, like, watch her side of the story along with knowing Ashley's side of the story. But from Marissa's perspective, when he said, hey, move in with me, come back to Virginia, and then texted her 15 hours before she was headed out and all of her things were packed, to her that she was done. When he said, like, don't come, never mind, I'm blocking you, I'm done, I'm moving on, this is a divorce, we're not going to be able to work this out, you know? But I don't know from his perspective when the marriage was over and he decided finally, even after trying to reconcile a few times, what on his version of the story, why they decided to get a divorce. But either way, I can update you guys if you like. Drop it in the comments and let me know.
I don't think there should be a part 2. I think this is very messy. Ashley's definitely in the wrong. I don't care what side of the story you have. You still ruined a marriage and took a husband. Bill is in the wrong because if you were done with your wife and you had y'all were exchanged or separated, maybe you should have kept that so that your ex-wife or soon-to-be ex-wife could have a life of her own. That was messy for him to go back and then tell her that he wanted her back and then still stick with Ashley and still have a baby with her, even though Ashley got 3 baby daddies and the wife currently has no kids, and then he has a kid with a different wife. This is messy. What do y'all think? Put it in the comments below.